With the launch of Season 19 came some big changes to weapons, subclasses, and even a few exotic armor pieces. One of the many things that stood out to me was the buff from 35 to 60 on Arc Souls, because that's a significant buff. It might not seem like a whole lot to some players, but once we factor in how Arc Souls react while amplified, this takes things to a whole new level, because the RPM goes from 100 to 225, and we now shoot bursts of 5 instead of 3. It's just enough to almost make me want to main a Warlock for a bit. I'm joking, but seriously, last season we covered a Warlock build with an emphasis on Arc Souls, weapon damage buffs, and grenades, and after the recent update, I'd like to touch back on that again, because Arc Souls flat out slap now. If we put these in a team environment, they can rip through ads in just about any activity we can currently play. Guys, I'm being dead serious when I say Arc Souls make content easy mode now. I'm also starting to think they would be a good addition to a DPS scenario in something like a raid where the whole team has our Arc Souls, but I haven't had a chance to confirm this yet, so please take it with a grain of salt. Since the focus is our Arc Souls, the goal is to get our Rift back as fast as possible, which can be done in a few different ways. One of my favorites is a combination of Ionic Traces, blinding effects, and the Delicate Tomb, because this setup works great as an all-around build and it's phenomenal at crowd control. This loadout also gives us the freedom to use our armor mod slots for something other than the usual suspects like ability regen and damage buffs, since the subclass and exotics take care of all that for us. This means we can use all those slots for more survivability and higher difficulty content, and it just so happens that's exactly what we're using them for. Sorry. The mods are Well of Tenacity twice for the 50% damage reduction after picking up a Void Well, Elemental Time Dilation to extend the timer of Well of Tenacity, and Reaping Wellmaker to create the Void Well when successfully getting a weapon kill after dropping our Rift. Since we will be dropping Rifts everywhere, we'll have a damage reduction most of the time from Well of Tenacity. And the last mod is Seeking Wells, so the wells come to us while we're standing in our cozy little rift, but if that's not your thing, it can be swapped out for a different mod like Well of Utility to help bump the recharge rate of our rift by 10% after collecting a Void Well. Keep that in mind if you have crappy RNG like me. A few minor mods I like to throw into the mix to complement the build are Harmonic Siphon and Dynamo on the helmet to create orbs and gain more super energy from rifts, Insulation on the legs to reduce class ability cooldowns when collecting orbs, and Distribution on the class item to reduce all ability cooldowns when using our class ability. Circling back to the subclass, since we are using it as the ability regen workhorse, we want to create as many Ionic Traces as possible. An easy way to do this is with Spark of Ions to create Ionic Traces from defeating jolted targets, Spark of Shock to jolt targets with grenades, Spark of Beacons to blind targets with arc weapons, and Blinding Nades. All of these blind or jolt targets, and when we pair them with the aspect Electrostatic Mind, we have an endless supply of Ionic Traces and the ability to stay amplified while in combat, which buffs our Arc Souls. This is due to Electrostatic Mind creating Ionic Traces from defeating targets with abilities, that includes Arc Souls, and defeating targets that are blinded or jolted. And of course, the other aspect is Arc Souls, because this would be a very awkward video if it was about Arc Souls and we didn't have that aspect equipped. The last fragment is Spark of Resistance, but I only threw that on for some extra survivability. It can be swapped out for Spark of Discharge if you'd like even more Ionic Traces from Arc Weapon kills. And speaking of Arc Weapon kills, this brings me to the exotics. The Delicate Tomb is arguably one of the best weapons for the Arc Warlock. It's almost as if it was made with Warlocks in mind because of how well it synergizes with the subclass. But something I don't see too many players mention is how well it synergizes with the Rain of Fire exotic legs. Yes, the Rain of Fires are meant to work with the Solar subclass, but for some odd reason, we can make ourselves radiant even on the Arc subclass while wearing these cool looking legs. I mean, technically it works on any subclass, but you get what I'm saying. Bungie has known about it, so I'm assuming it was intentional. This means we get the 25% damage buff to all weapons after getting a kill with the Delicate Tomb. If you thought the Delicate Tomb was mean before, wait till you try it with the damage buff. It chews through everything, especially when it chains to other adds, and when that happens, it creates a ton of Ionic Traces from the fragments and the weapon itself. We end up with Rift after Rift, which in return gives us never-ending Arc Souls and survivability from Well of Tenacity. our Arc Souls can do all the work for us in low to mid-tier content, and in higher difficulty content like Nightfalls, they come in handy to help clear ads. It really doesn't get any easier than this. The only thing we're gonna have an issue with is not having all 3 types of champion weapons in something like a GM, but that's what we have friends for, right? Anyways, I apologize for this video being so short, but I have covered this one in the past. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I hope you found this simple build useful. If so, a like would be awesome. But more importantly, be good to one another and have a fantastic day. Thank you!
I'll fucking take smoke, I'ma poke a hole through you, choking's overdue. Come at me and you won't get any older, dude. Crack your holder too. Heating up inside of me, blood so violently. Thanks for trying me. Now it's finally time to see how this rivalry becomes a dynasty.